guest who will not only inspire us today, but also share his invaluable experience and success story. I'm excited to introduce you to our guest speaker, Osama Usmani, the brilliant mind behind HealthPass, a groundbreaking tech startup based in Toronto. And HealthPass has created a digital marketplace for medical tourism packages. It changes the way that patients select elective care providers all around the world, and their mission is to ensure an affordable, safe, and smooth experience for all. So, Osama and his team have developed innovative solutions that empower individuals to make informed decisions about their healthcare, making a shift in the industry. So, today we actually have the privilege of diving deep into HealthPass and discovering the transformative approach that has reshaped the medical tourism landscape. We'll explore the challenges that Osama has encountered on his journey of building this app and the innovative solutions that it offers, and the impact that they are actually making on the healthcare industries. So, without further ado, let's give a warm virtual welcome to Osama, the visionary founder of HealthPass. Osama, thank you for joining us today. We're very, very excited to learn from your expertise and hear your success story firsthand. So, as a start, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, for sure. Thank you. Thank you for having me, first of all, and thank you for that introduction. Um, Sorry, what was the question? Like, introduce myself, right? Um,
Yes.
I'm so sorry. I'm
Yes.
just a bit nervous, guys. But yeah, my name is Osama, Osama Usmani. I'm based out of Toronto usually, but here out of Ottawa at the moment. I'm a student at the University of Ottawa. I'm still in my final year here, studying business management. And yeah, just as Audrey thankfully mentioned, I'm one of the founders of HealthPass. HealthPass is, we're trying to gun to be the Expedia of medical tourism is probably the best way to summarize it. With our goal being trying to make medical tourism, especially elective care and people traveling for that, hopefully a little bit safer, a little bit more affordable, and hopefully a bit more enjoyable too. We use a variety of tools, strategies, some features we're currently working on, some features we've already left behind, but with the same goal of just trying to make the whole experience again a little bit safer, a little bit more affordable, and hopefully a little bit more enjoyable for people. So yeah, thank you for having me. It's nice to be here.
So, Osama, can you share a little bit about the inspiration behind HealthPass?
Yeah, of course. I've been working on Health Pass as an idea under like the same logo for a little while now. It's been almost 2.5 years, but we've pivoted many different times. And honestly, I would say that's what usually good founders and good founding teams should be doing. At the end of the day, you're supposed to be actively thinking about the problem and obviously about the solution, and therefore obviously iterations of different ideas are just a natural byproduct of the whole process. In terms of like how it really got started, I guess it really was just the pandemic here in Canada. I'm not too sure about you guys down in your part of the world, but over here we were locked down for almost 2 years, I think, give or take. So during that time, I didn't really have too much to do. I was taking online courses, but that wasn't filling at the time that well. There's only so many video games you can play. But I had a few friends kind of just all over the place, and we kept up with each other online and things like that. And during that time, one of my good friends, Miriam, who's one of my first co-founders, she's from the country Georgia. I see Nick here from, I think that's Russia, but Georgia's right around the corner from there as well. But yeah, she was based out of Eastern Europe, and she, among other things, was a public health analyst, and that's kind of what she did as a career. And we used to just kind of talk and chat and come up with things that discuss things, not even really come up with things. At one point, though, during the pandemic, I'll wrap this up real quick, but I have an aunt who lives in Pakistan, and she basically would be kind of going in and out of her clinic to pick up medication, but also to chat with her doctor pretty often. Like every week, she'd go like a couple times. But during the beginning of the pandemic, when things were kind of really heating up, her doctor had told her like, "Hey, stock up on your medication and don't come here for a little while. You're." She was an older lady, so her immune system wasn't the best either. So it was just better for her to stay at home. But obviously, none of us really knew how long this whole kind of pandemic situation would last. And at the end of the day, she had to go back at some point. And the first time she went back into the clinic, back into town, She came back out of the experience with obviously COVID, if that wasn't obvious already, but influenza as well, which here in Canada is something that we've relatively just taken care of. It's not even really an issue anymore. But back in Pakistan, where my family's from, it's still a huge problem. She's fine and she's still with us, so it's okay kind of looking back at it. But at the same time, that really was that annoyance, I guess, when I heard about that, was the first kind of switch for me of just thinking like healthcare could be better. And obviously healthcare was in the news all the time and the headlines, being obviously during the pandemic. And it was just one of those things that me and this friend of mine, who's also a health policy expert by trade. I'm a consultant by trade, so I don't really have any industry specific experience, but just a little bit everywhere. We just kind of came together and just started working on something. But again, as I mentioned, our ideas changed the more that we learned about the industry itself, learned about different connections, learned about different clients. And yeah, so the idea kind of started from there, and it's really sprouted into something great that has been a great learning experience, and obviously has been a lot of fun.
So you mentioned that there has been a lot of changes in HealthPass and how it operated. So what was the initial operation when it first started?
Yeah, of course. We started with the naive idea. I still think it's a really good idea, but relatively naive, that we would like to simply get people's EMRs, which stand for electronic medical records, on their phones. That's it. We just want it to be hopefully an app. Maybe we can download it from the, at least here in Canada, everything is under government. It's the public takes care of it. It's not private. We could just maybe download the form, stick it on an app, and display it nicely and kind of build from there. Um, the idea was great, and we even actually won some awards for it. The international, what do they stand for? Forum on Advancements in Healthcare flew us out to Las Vegas to give us an award for it. It was a really great thing because they could tell it was a great idea too. But when you start working in the industry, you realize pretty quickly that, at least here in North America, everything is very siloed. And obviously here in Canada, everything is also very regulated. So it was just an area where we realized like it's very difficult. It's possible, but it's very difficult. The second thing we realized, and the reason we moved away from that idea, was even though it sounds great that, oh, everyone should have their medical records on them at all times and they should be able to, I don't know, empower themselves with that. That sounds great. But the problem is when we started researching, okay, who would pay for this? Who would pay us in order to have access to their medical records? There are people, but we realized that the size and the scope of the people, the clients in this case, was relatively small. And when you start doing a little bit more research, you find that people that want their medical records are usually people that are going to be getting some sort of medical help done or some sort of procedure, maybe in the future, or maybe they just had one. So we realized that there was a much bigger kind of problem to tackle, and the main pain point to tackle was more around getting people help with like getting their health procedures, and the feature of just having your medical and recovery information available. Suddenly that became less of the business model and more of just a feature that we add. So in our app now, and things, it's still a work in progress, but as we work towards it, we help people track their recovery, make sure they have all their information. But the main business kind of model is more about making sure people can find the right doctors at the right destinations for the right price. And we realized, again, the feature is great and it would make people's lives easier, but it's more of a vitamin. It's not really a painkiller. And when you're in startups for a little while, you realize very quickly that if you want to be successful, you have to focus on not on vitamins, but on painkillers. So that's what we did.
So am I correct to say that the initial idea was to have an app where people can store all of their medical
Yeah.
information and documents? So whenever they go somewhere, or let's say they have to travel overseas, because I know that after COVID, um, traveling makes it traveling becomes a much harder, and a lot of countries require you to have like certain documents for you to enter those countries. So that was the idea, that HealthPass was based on initially.
Yeah,
Um, and I
absolutely.
just feel like,
Yeah, sorry, go on.
and I just feel like that. Well, I'm not sure if it's like good to say this, but I feel like that should be the work of the government, because I
For sure.
spent a year and a half or 2 years in Singapore during COVID, and even like after COVID kind of died out a little bit. They have the Ministry of Health. They actually have an app that I think like all Singaporeans and like expats and whoever reside in Singapore. There's this app that called Help. I think it's also called HealthPass. I'm not so sure. But it's where they can access all of the medical records,
Yeah,
and it's for free. And I just
absolutely.
find it's something that's so simple, but
Yeah.
it's so effective. It's so useful.
And the funny thing about that, like that digitization of medical records that are usually on paper and making them digital and available, you're right. It's definitely something governments should be doing. At the time during the pandemic, one of the issues that, especially here in Canada, I don't want to speak about different parts of the world, but it was a big political issue here as well, where people were um, complaining, let's just say, about the fact that the health industry in Health Canada has been very slow to do their digitization process. When we started that idea, it was still the process that everything is printed. If you, as yourself, wanted to even request your medical records, you would have to send them an email for the request, and then they would send you back a fax. They weren't even allowed to email you the PDF, let's say. It was at that point, let alone having a PDF. You guys have an app. We weren't even close to that at that point. But obviously, as things continued, the pandemic continued, obviously more funding was provided. Now things are a little bit more digitized. The government has really stepped in with a great action plan. But along with that, I'm sure you guys, just like as you mentioned, travel was a big thing, and Health Canada worked with the various government agencies, and they introduced different travel health apps to make sure your immunization records and that sort of thing were all up to date. And as you just finally said, it was free. And that's something that we realized, like at the end of the day, maybe we had a great idea, but as a startup founder or somebody that's trying to start a company, you need to also be looking at your business model. And to a certain extent, we didn't even feel great about this mission. Like the mission felt great, but we didn't feel good about charging people for it. It didn't make sense. So we knew we had to add a different aspect to that. So now, as I mentioned, again, the thing that we started with, that vision, has now just become more of a feature, more of a byproduct of a larger business model and problem that we're trying to tackle here.
Interesting. Were there any particular individuals or companies that served as a role model or like a source of inspirations during the creation of HealthPass for you?
1,000%. Again, as I said, it was a rather long and twisted journey. So we had, many different experiences, went through a couple accelerators, things like that. I guess the best way to put it is there's a company, I don't know if you ever heard of it. It was a startup a few years ago, so they're probably just like a full-blown company now. They're called ClassPass. I don't know if anyone wants to do a quick Google search or anything, but they're called ClassPass. And basically their idea, and I heard about this when I was doing my internship at a company, all my coworkers basically had a membership, a ClassPass membership. It was an app. And basically I don't know how it worked exactly, but I think it was either like largely subsidized or even paid for directly by the employer. And this ClassPass app basically would just allow the person to basically get into any workout, yoga class or gym class, whatever, right away. So even if you're at work and you want to use this gym across the street rather than going to your home gym all the way 40 minutes away, you can just step in for a random Tuesday and go ahead and use the gym. Why? Because you have a ClassPass membership. So that's kind of how it works. So for me, our kind of North Star really developed around that. I really saw the way that ClassPass individually had made this segment so much easier by just providing exclusive membership opportunities and just showing information and making it available in a really nice way. And they did it by tying in people's employers. To me, that whole flywheel that was kind of created, obviously for a different industry, was super inspiring. I knew right away for a North Star, that's something I wanted to model myself after. In terms of kind of how we got to this point, though, it's imagine taking that North Star, that first, product, and kind of putting it through the mold, or the machine of accelerators in different classes. So for example, we went through Tree Frog Accelerator based here in the GTA here in Canada. And they're less about helping you with ideas, but more about just refining your ideas. They like the grand vision that we had, as I already mentioned, and they really just helped us define it, find customer segments, teach us how to message it correctly, all that sort of good stuff. So we went through that process a fair few times. And yeah, honestly, most recently we went through that just now over Christmas. So it's one of those things that we started with that, I guess the inspiration, yeah, ClassPass, I always think of them. But the idea, again, has been refined quite a bit just through all the experiences that we've had, all the mentorship that we've gained. So
Was it free for you? Or was it free for you guys to attend that?
I want to say yes. I think they had a paid option or something, but I want to say yeah, it was free for us. I don't want to know. I don't know if anyone else didn't pay. We actually got something in return. So when you go through Tree Frog, there's different cohorts, right? Um, in part of our cohort, there was, I think, 25 or 30 companies, and every cohort is kind of like a competition, I guess. Like they basically make you do pitch competitions every week, and this goes on for a few months, right? So every week you practice a little bit, you learn a little bit, you refine the pitch, and every week you do that and you kind of build points. At the end, the teams with the better points, the more development they've done, they get rewarded by kind of going into this final tournament competition where it's like a pitch competition. They invite a few people out. My family was there, and all this sort of. It's a big event, and we all come together. And we had won that final pitch competition. I'm still friends with the competition at the time. We're still great. It's a great community, but we won, and in return, I guess like the prize. It wasn't an investment. It was more like a grant, like a work order. So they gave us almost $10,000 worth of free work in Canadian. Obviously, wasn't exactly life changing at the same time. It's not $1 billion or anything, but it was definitely something that gave us a little bit more confidence and helped us kind of get to where we need to go.
I see.
I didn't have
Well,
to pay.
while you, I mean, it was free, and you actually got a lot of like mentorship and refinement with your startup. So it's a win-win situations right there. Well, in envisioning HealthPass, what were the key principles or values that guided your decision making and product development process?
Hmm. I feel like a lot of companies should have this written down, and I would advise that we do not. Um, and I want to say the reason is just because the team that is working on this is pretty close. Like we already knew each other, we knew what we were all about. So we never had to necessarily define our culture. If I did have to define it for you guys, though, we really are just trying to help people, but also want to make a sustainable business out of this. I think that's the one thing that the startup industry, let's just call it the innovation economy, right? I think that's something, the lack of succinct business models is something that the innovation economy has been struggling with, especially in the last few years, where you have a lot of people raising a lot of money and a lot of hype, but turns out their business model wasn't exactly working. It's something that affects, us. Investors are wary nowadays. Like they're much more hesitant, and they want to make sure they cross their T's and dot their I's before they agree to anything. But that's because of a few bad actors. So for us, I guess the things that really keep us going forward is, number one, how can we help people? We want to do something that's helping people, hence the painkiller model I mentioned. We don't want to be a vitamin. We don't want to just make people's lives a little bit easier. We want to solve a problem that they're having. So that's number one. And I guess number two is just hopefully we need to make sure that we can do this in a sustainable way, that we're not losing money here. We are trying to make some money. And at the end of the day, people and customers don't mind, generating value for you if you're generating value for them. So, when you find that marriage, that product market fit, it's a great feeling.
Yeah, yeah, I do agree with that because the Aha Slice actually it's also a tech startup, and to put Aha Slice into the interactive presentation, more like presentation software industry, we cannot catch up with the big players like PowerPoint or Google Slides or Prezi or Canva, etc. But and we are actually a product that is made in Vietnam. And when you talk about tech products, apps, etc., when you talk about those things, if someone mentions that, hey, like this software or this app, it's from Vietnam, it's made by Vietnamese people, maybe first of all they'd be surprised, and second of all they kind of have like some doubts, like, yeah, okay, if you say that they from Singapore, or they from Korea or bigger South Asian countries, then that makes sense. But Vietnam, like, like, should we really trust it? But then again, we value our customer experience a lot, and we take that as a core value when we refine our products. And luckily, I feel like the customers are smarter these days. They don't just base the opinion on where the company is from. It's more about the product itself, the experience that they have while using the product, and that eventually lead to them deciding whether they want to continue using the product or not. So, um, yeah, so it's not just about like the origin of the product. It's all about putting the customer's values, customer experience as a core value of the company. I think that's really important.
A
So,
hundred.
Osama, I think
Yeah, sorry. I'm sorry.
sorry, I think we're just like too excited to like talk about this. So I'll just let you speak first.
No, like I mean, I do this for a living. I love doing this, right? But just to what you were saying, don't let the people get you down. That's the best thing about the internet. The fact of the matter is, like, you can provide value to anybody from anywhere. Usually, if there's no firewall, but you can do that, right? So, all the power to you guys. And I don't think that, especially in the industry you're in, you don't have to worry about that. Something that in medical, again, in my industry, I'm not claiming to be some sort of great person. I'm obviously young and starting my career, but even me, I can feel that geographically there are differences. When we talk to customers, for example, let's say from Mexico, and they're a medical tourism provider, they maybe do, I don't know, rhinoplasties or orthopedics. They talk about the fact that they have to compete with other providers that might be in ideal locations that maybe they aren't. And they're fighting for their right to show that they can also provide quality care. So for us at HealthPass, like, we see it every day, and we see other people overcoming that every day too. So, um, I think that's just part of the game. And if you can keep going, you can keep going. And just as you mentioned, you got to change your product by listening to your customers. All businesses do this. If they're 50 years old or if they're 2 days old, the only thing, I guess, for startups, when you're going from 0 to 1, when you do that process, usually you're not getting paid to do that, which is a very tiring process, listening to customers and integrating that feedback. Usually you're not getting paid for it at a startup, which is a bit more difficult. And it also is maybe a bit more hands-on when you're at a startup, because it's harder for you to get in front of those customers for that feedback as well. But if you can get used to doing that back and forth, and be used to being in that flywheel, that's really all it takes to run a company successfully. At least that's what I think.
Yeah, I agree. Well, Osama, I think let's move to the your story, your journey of being an entrepreneur. Were there any moments that you doubted the feasibility of your vision for HealthPass? Did you feel like, what, this is probably not going to work out? Like, what am I even doing here?
Oh, 1000% every day. No, like, I guess yes, the nervousness and anxieties that everybody has about anything that they're doing is always there. Um, but for me, I feel like Health Pass and working on Health Pass is one of those things. It's the first time in my life that I was excited about going to work and working every day. For a little bit of context, I went to school. going into accounting. My dad was a accountant. My grandfather was an accountant, so I therefore should become an accountant apparently. And I was going to go into the CPA stream. I got into a great internship at Deloitte. In my first internship, I worked as a financial analyst. The second time around, though, I had a great mentor in between those two terms, and he basically kind of told me, like, in very simple words, like, dude, you're smart enough, just go get it. So I literally just said, why not? Why should I not go get it? At the time, I wanted to leave accounting. I didn't really know what I wanted to do, so I became a consultant. And I'm sure you're going to hear that in a lot of places. I again was at Deloitte again. I was out of their Montreal office this time. And though I loved the work, I learned so much about, I don't know, how to speak, how to analyze things, how to present things properly, how to formally write things, how to write memos properly, how to manage a team. I learned a lot of these things, and I love the day to day. But I didn't really love, or was I passionate about the client and the client work that we were doing. I didn't really care about how to. At the time, I was on the tax team, and we were basically saving multi-billion-dollar corporations from saving a few dollars on taxes as they build infrastructure. Super boring. I really didn't like doing the work. So when I'm up at 2 a.m. working on a deck, I didn't feel the urge to do that. You know what I mean? But I knew that I gained enough skills at that point that I was in the right place. Around that time as well, KPMG hosted they have an event here in Canada. I don't know if it's everywhere, but it's called, what is it called? The Ideation Challenge, KPMG's Ideation Challenge. And it's basically a very large hackathon. And I would really, really recommend anybody, whether you're from the business side or the tech side, to compete in as many hackathons as you can. Those things are great simulations for basically how it feels like to work at a startup. But anyways, I went through that challenge. There was a great team. I'm still friends with a few of the people that were there, and we just worked. It was 2 days, and we learned a lot, and we kicked something out. We worked together. It didn't go anywhere. It was just a challenge, and that was fine. But the moral of that story was the fact that I learned that this whole world of business people and tech people working together to create solutions, and it's called the innovation economy, and the people that do this are called founders usually, and so on and so forth. Like, that whole world opened up to me at that point, and I realized, like, hey, I can take these skills from being a consultant, and I can use it towards this passion of mine that's slowly developing. I enjoyed the work that I was doing, and with HealthPass, it's been a muse for me. So when you ask me, for example, how nervous are you about it maybe not working out? I don't think I ever started HealthPass with the goal of becoming a billionaire or anything. If I make some money, that's great. It's a great byproduct. But when I started it as a muse for me to apply my knowledge. I'm learning so much, different internships, learning from school. Where do I actually apply these things? Like, I need this project that I can, continuously add my paint to. So that was the number one thing. And the number two thing was, the experiences I was gaining. You know, through HealthPass, I've been able to meet so many great people. I've been able to open doors into places I never thought I'd ever be able to join in. Just as a small anecdote, literally about opening doors. Last year, we have a conference here in Toronto called Collision Conference. And it's every June, in the end of June, in the summertime. I'm just going to close my window here. It's every June in the summertime. And last year, I had basically just got a general admission ticket. It's pretty expensive, but I got one. And I used to literally sneak backstage, sneak in the VIP areas, the investor areas, to try to chat to people. I met a lot of great people. Sorry about that. But yeah, I met a lot of great people during that. But it was a time that I literally had to sneak into these places. And this year, again, through the work that we did at HealthPass, we were invited to take part of their alpha program. And now, instead of having to sneak around, I get invited. We have a big booth. The whole team's going to be there. So for me, it was really a full circle moment, in a way that it justified the work that we had put in. If we make money from this, great. If we don't, and it's just one of those things that maybe later I have to stop, it's already worth it to me because I was able to accomplish so many things that I never would have been able to do otherwise. I use my time in a productive way, and what's better than that?
That's a very interesting sharing because um well, I haven't had the opportunity to talk to a lot of like, you know, founder of startup, etc. So I don't really know what's the thought process they had when they were developing the product. But I just feel like it's not very often that we will have, founders of startups that think innocent, that think in a way that, this is, even if it's a failure, even if it doesn't work out, it's going to be a very valuable lesson for me. Because as you have shared, wanting to have a sustainable business is very important. And when you start something, you of course want to have like a good outcome, right? Um, so what you have just shared right now, I would say it's kind of like, for me, it's kind of rare to actually encounter. So that's very interesting.
I just live like this. I don't know. To me, I just feel like the older I get, the more I realize that the thing that's important is relationships, not your LinkedIn, not even necessarily your degree. I mean, hopefully, if you're a doctor, I want a doctor with a degree. Some things are you need a degree for, but usually, even more than that, relationships matter. Let's just say in business, relationship matters. For me, I just have always looked at whether it be HealthPass, whether it be my internships at various places, it was me working on something with people, and those people have gone on to hopefully benefit me or teach me something in the future. I've met a lot of people through HealthPass, and I've met a lot of great people through HealthPass. That's all it has to be about. And whether it's HealthPass that is the success story, or maybe something else that happens 10 years from now that those people come around to help me with, I'm already investing in myself. I don't know. That's just the way I look at it. Obviously, as a startup founder, though, you don't want to be too naive. You want to make sure that you're using your time wisely and you're applying your knowledge wisely, and you're working on things quickly, because a lot of people that become founders also have the opportunity to make a lot of money in corporate, let's say, right? For me, that's always been a thing. I've been working on this for 2.5 years, which is actually pretty long. It's given us the opportunity to make a lot of pivots, and we're have the luxury of time a little bit, but that's only really because I'm still a student founder. And soon I'll be graduating, and the thought process around just the financials of it all and everything are going to change. I don't want to paint a pretty picture here. Everything that you do should still be financially sustainable, hopefully. But that being said, for me to do this during a young age, for me to do this during school, again, at a time where I'm learning a lot, um, it was a no-brainer. Now, even if things don't go well for whatever reason, and I go to my next job interview in a few years or whatever else, I can show them, like, I can point to my resume, I can call in those great recommendations, and I can tell them, like, hey, even though we didn't become billionaires or anything, we worked on a great client list. We know how this industry works. We know how to develop a product. We know how to develop a go-to-market strategy, so on and so forth. And you don't have to just trust that school taught me all these things. I could show you that I know these things because we've applied those things. It's basically just an internship. That's the way that I would look at it.
I would look at this um, in this way. I would use two sentences to kind of describe this experience. The first one is, um, it's not about the destination; it's about the journey. And the second one is to trust the process.
Yeah, at
It
that
is. I feel like it is. It was really is to trust the process for you right here.
I would say it's the process, but also the team. At the end of the day, when you asked me just now, when was Health Pass created, what started it, I didn't really talk about the idea. I told you right off the bat, the idea changed. The only things that stayed the same were the people working on them, hence me and my friends, let's say, my co-founders. And the only other thing that stayed the same was the logo. Every other thing, the clients, the industry, the idea itself, the business model, whatever, that changed all the time. And that's how it should be, especially for a startup. Be lean, be flexible, and trust in the fact that your team is a smart team. I've always surrounded myself with people that are much smarter than I am, and I trust that they can do a great job. All we have to do is find a great idea to chase after, and kind of go from there. So it's less about the process, and I think trust your team. Trust your team and trust yourself that you know that you're smart enough to figure something out, and the idea is going to change. So don't let that get to you. If the idea changes, it means you're doing something right. The people that don't do the right thing are chasing after the same idea, the wrong idea, and they're not learning from that. If you're learning from it and you're changing your ideas, that means you're doing something good.
Yeah, yeah, totally. So let's go deeper into the innovative solutions that offered by HealthPass. How does HealthPass leverage technology to like streamline and simplify the process of connecting people with top quality healthcare providers around the world?
Yeah, 100%. So, you know, our catchphrase at Health Pass is basically find treatment for less. We really just want to help people find safe and affordable care while taking ownership of their medical journeys and hopefully recovery journey as well. The number one thing that we're trying to do here is really mix tourism with, I guess, the medical industry. In terms of what we do, so you mentioned already we're a digital marketplace. So yes, we connect people with elective care providers around the globe. For now, only in Mexico, but we should be growing. But yeah, we connect them with providers around the world, and hopefully, again, help them save some money. In terms of features and kind of tech, the number one thing that we do is bundle your procedure with the travel and hopefully your stay into a whole complete package. So again, really think about Expedia when I say this. We try to make it as easy as possible. And again, our North Star for this feature is Expedia. We would love to use AI to help, kind of put these bundles together. And that's something that we're still implementing. It's not implemented as of yet. We really, for now, rely on our own expertise. So when you're building a package, it's usually one of myself or the team working on that on the side. But we definitely have an idea of how we want to implement AI into that portion. The second portion I guess, feature that we have is we call live pricing flares. So we have a database, part of the research that we did, we have a database of the average price per procedure based on a given region. So I can tell you what you should be paying for, let's say, I don't know, a knee surgery in Korea or a knee surgery in Mexico. And therefore, when our patients are scrolling through, the list of procedures, they can see whether or not they're getting a good price, if that makes sense. Like we'll tell them like, hey, this offer is 10% under market average, you should go for it. Or it's 50% more than market average, maybe you should rethink that. Things like that. And the last feature that we provide is a more of like a software as a service, but it's tools for providers. We basically help medical providers that may already have signed up a customer or maybe signed up the customer through our app. Either way, we help them create treatment summaries and auto create membership for them. And again, just hopefully track their continuity of care. So basically what that means is every time you book through a medical provider, their business model for that medical provider, they're focused on providing medical care. They're not necessarily focused on getting you a plane ticket or making sure that you're staying in a nice place or whatever else. We basically will take that patient that just signed up for a procedure and we'll hook them up, obviously show them their whole treatment summary, like this is everything, but we'll hook them up with recommendations of you should stay here, you should stay here for this amount of time. You should, I don't know, fly in at this time. Here's a few recommendations on flights, things like that. And again, we help providers stay in touch with their customers in that way. And again, just that continuity of care. We realized that providers who are now our clients, they had a hard time being tourism agencies, basically travel agencies, along with also just being clinics. We want to help them stay being clinics, do what they do best. We'll take care of the kind of the travel and tourism portion of it.
Well, so you mentioned that right now HealthPass is available within North America and and Mexico, and you're looking forward to expand it to other regions around the world. So, how does HealthPass address the challenges of language barriers, cultural differences, and like different medical practices all across different countries?
That's definitely still something that we're trying to figure out. As of right now, we only offer a service in English. I don't think that's sustainable by any means. However, we've been sourcing our patients from the North America landscape, and sending them to Mexico. Our providers are great, and these partnerships in Mexico are great, and we don't have much of a language barrier there. But in terms of sourcing them, again, they all speak English, so we haven't had an issue with language as of yet. In terms of like how we can help kind of patient provider language barriers and cultural differences, even I think that's literally our raison d'être, as they say in French, like the reason that we exist, because we are basically the friendly storefront for patients to speak to in order to alleviate any of the miscommunication that might happen with another culture or another language. So therefore, if you're a patient again from America, you're going to see everything in English. You're going to speak to somebody in English. Your customer service, if anything is needed, is going to be in English. And you're speaking to, again, a Canadian company. Um, you don't have to worry about your doctor in Mexico maybe not knowing English as well. But yeah, again, it's still a work in progress. It's definitely not something that's fully addressed. Like, I'm not too sure what's going to happen when we start sourcing patients from France, let's say. But it's definitely something that we need to keep in mind. I do think that we are best positioned to take care of that problem, though. And I guess the very simple reason is we are meant to be an international connector. So the fact of the matter is we're ready to speak almost any language when the time comes. When it comes to medical tourism provider, let's just say again, you're a small clinic in Colombia or a small clinic in Mexico or somewhere else, your number one priority is taking care of patients that appear in front of you. Your number one priority is not to speak 50 different languages in order to bring patients in from everywhere. Um, that's our job. So for us, we're still working on it, obviously, but we definitely are the best position for it. And if we can take care of this problem, our clients have let us know that they'll be really happy with that.
Yeah. So I suppose that's one of the future developments that we can look forward to seeing in HealthPass. But can you share with us what other advancement do you envision for HealthPass in terms of like transforming the healthcare landscape?
For sure. One of the best places that we've been uh, taking feedback from, oddly enough, has been Reddit forums, because people on Reddit love to complain a lot. And if you're on some of these forums, the number one thing people complain about, along with maybe a bad doctor, a bad experience, or something, um, is the fact that there's a lack of community. They feel alone. A lot of people, especially in elective care, they may not even necessarily be telling their family members about this, maybe not even their friends. And the second thing is the financial aspect of it all. There's a little bit of a dark joke that we have internally at HealthPass where we say, with cost being the driver for patients, a little bit more than quality sometimes, people are really risking their lives to save a few bucks. Our research shows, for example, that most of the elective care procedures being conducted now are patients that are making less than $90,000 a year. And that's only in the US. So for us, we've been seeing a demographic change, a socioeconomic change of the people that usually are partaking in medical tourism and elective care. So for them, again, with cost being the main driver, we want to alleviate that pain point. We don't offer this feature right now, but I would love to do it at some point. Some sort of a buy now, pay later program where we can spread across the lump sum payment that a patient would usually be burdened with. So, for example, even if you travel to Mexico. Like a rhinoplasty in the US reaches sometimes up to $13,000 to $16,000 USD. The same rhinoplasty, through HealthPass, let's say in Mexico, will be a lot cheaper. Maybe about $5,000 to $6,000, right? Again, USD. It's much cheaper. That's great. We're already helping the problem. But even then, you have to think about it. Putting $6,000 as a lump sum on your credit card can ruin your plans for the rest of your year, and sometimes is not something even feasible for people at all. So we would love to, as HealthPass, introduce some sort of a buy now, pay later program where members can maybe spread out their payments a little bit, and maybe pay them at different times and things like that in smaller sums, just to help the cash flow that everybody is having to deal with. Because again, as I mentioned, the two things that we realize is a big problem is community. Patients feel alone, and we think our membership community is already going to do great work in that, so that's fine. But the second thing is just, again, the financial aspect and the lump sum aspect that medical care can sometimes provide. At the end of the day, the one thing to remember about us, we are in elective care. So our patients are swiping credit cards, not health cards, which is also a big problem because, again, the financial burden and responsibility falls squarely on these people's shoulders.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing your incredible journey of building HealthPass and providing us with like very valuable insights into its operation and future plans. I think that your innovative approach to bridging the gap in healthcare accessibility is actually like extremely inspiring. And knowing you, we kind of like the same age, and like seeing you doing these things is actually very like I actually admire that a lot. But unfortunately, our time together has come to an end. But like before we wrap up, I just want to extend a sincere thank you to Osama for taking the time to join us today and share your expertise. And I think that innovation and transformative solutions like HealthPass are actually shaping the future of healthcare, making it more accessible and patient-centric. So thank you all for joining us today. Stay tuned for more exciting episodes of the Ask Live webinar series, where we continue to bring you inspiration and insights from industry leaders and subject matter expertise. Have a good night, guys.
Thank you.